you'll bear with us a little longer. We're trying to get our few other folks to show up. Okay, thank you for your patience. We can start now. We have 6 members out of the 7 on the board present, and Judith Hamer has said she'll be here joining us pretty soon. And we have, of course, the staff present. So my name is Paul Biederman. I'm the new chair of the old board, the Ethics and Campaign Review Board. I'm Jason. Mr. Miller here has taken over. I've taken over for him after just about a decade of his service. So we appreciate that very much. I'd like each of the members of the board to introduce themselves so that you can be familiar with them. Please start. Okay, and you remember to use your.
So Andrew Black, and I was just recently appointed.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, for joining us.
Fuentes, I was just recently appointed as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jose.
Justin Miller, Vice Chair of the Board, and Andrew, welcome board. It's great to have you. And I know it's your second meeting, but good to have you.
Okay,
I'm Christina Martinez. I'm an attorney here in Santa Fe. I've been on this board for a long time. I don't even remember how long. Maybe you guys do.
Hello, I'm Christina Brennan. I'm also an attorney in Santa Fe, and I'm new to the board. I think my first meeting was this past December too.
and if you notice the surfeit of attorneys on the board, the person who's joining us is one as well. So hopefully that works in our advantage. Okay, we have our agendas. I hope you have access to those. And I will ask for approval of the agenda for a motion to do that.
Chair Biederman, you want me to take roll?
Sorry?
Would you like me to take the roll call first?
Oh, okay. I thought I just did that.
Chair Biederman,
Here.
Andrew Black.
Here.
Christina Brennan.
Here.
Christina Martinez. Justin Miller. Jose Puentes.
Here.
And Judy Emmer will be joining us shortly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now if we could look at the agenda and see if we have a motion to approve it.
I'll move to approve.
Your first motion, okay.
Second.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, by unanimous consent, we have approved the agenda. We don't have a consent agenda. And the minutes, those were distributed to the board members by email a few days ago. Is there a motion to approve or any corrections to be made?
Move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Miller, second by Ms. Martinez. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, they're approved. Okay, the members have introduced themselves, so we can get past that. And I guess the first item on the agenda is we're going to have to pass on that actually because we don't have one of the members present who can vote on that. Excuse me. So we will we'll get back to that one in a moment. There are two complaints under items B and C by Ms. Benanato, and they're against two members of the staff, the attorneys of the city, both brought under the authority of the board to enforce the ethics code of the city. And what we're doing today is not determining those cases, but as provided in our rules, the first step in our process, whenever a complaint is filed, is to determine if it meets the criteria to be considered at all. And that involves reviewing the complaint, each complaint, in this case two, to determine if it basically states a claim as it's written, if all the facts are proved to be true. Also, whether it is within the jurisdiction of the board, including the time constraints for filing. And of course, it would let the record show that Ms. Amer has joined us. We were just starting the agenda. And whether also the complaint is brought to harass, as has been alleged by one of the respondents, or both of the respondents. So that means that we need to just review the complaint on its face. I see Ms. Beninato, the complainant, is here. Are either of the respondents here or represented? Okay, and you're, please.
Chair, my name is Heather Lambo. I'm the Assistant Director for Planning and Land Use.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Okay, so you're the director of, or assistant director of planning, right?
Yes,
So-
that's correct.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to get you introduced. What I'll do is, what I'd like to proceed is in this way. I'd like to have Ms. Beninato present. You can either do this as a single, presentation for both, or you can do each one separately if you wish, and give us a short summary of what you've stated and why you feel it meets the jurisdiction requirements for being heard by this board. Okay?
My name is Stephanie Beninato, and I brought these complaints because I am tired of city employees lying to boards and to the public. And that is what had happened in the Lucchese case, which is what these two complaints stem from. And in terms of the timing, I actually filed the complaint against Pat Vergelli well within the time period, including the January hearing in 2020. I'm sorry, I'm losing it, 2022, I believe it was. no, 2023, January 2023. And at that meeting, which was a BOA meeting, I had brought up that there was a ordinance that did not allow signs to use the it's 1452A6, which says non-conforming buildings that the historic board may allow a non-conforming building to become less non-conforming, but other structures except buildings, including signs that are not non-conforming, may not be changed or repaired, only removed. Yet we sat there in this BOA meeting, we've sat there in a historic board meeting in August of 2022. I appealed that. My appeal was, I was told that it couldn't be appealed because they changed the procedure and I should just wait, but don't worry, I would have input. But every time the Lucchese agents got up, they presented the same thing, that their sign was less non-conforming than the existing sign. That is not the standard at all that can be used. And yet that both the legal staff and the land use staff kept allowing this applicant to go forward and keep presenting that and having people vote on that issue, which is not the right standard. Additionally, I challenged this interpretation during the meeting, and Ms. Fergelli read 2 of the sentences, and when she got to the one about building structures other than buildings, including signs, she actually said, oh, this has nothing to do with signs. But it did. And then she actually said, and so did Ms. Lamboy in January of 2023, said that it met all the sign standards, which obviously is incorrect because they needed exceptions and variances, which means you are not meeting the sign standards. And so this went on, and then when the adoption of the minutes, which occurred in May last year, so I'm within the time frame of that. So the BOA minutes were, they made the decision in January of 23. The minutes and findings of facts were not adopted. They didn't even meet until May of 2023. At that point, the findings of facts talk about this building as being a contributing building, goes on about, you know, how contributing buildings have these standards, but it's not a contributing building. This is from Ms. Fergelli. So again, these are misrepresentation of law and fact. And again, I'm kind of tired of having to deal with people who don't actually want to be ethical. And I came forward because I believe the ethics code in the preamble or the prologue, I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but it talks about city officials and employees having integrity. As a lawyer, Ms. Fergelli, in my opinion, has violated candor to the tribunal, which is an ethical standard, and therefore is misrepresenting. And that's why I think you all should consider this, because we, the public, need to have confidence in what is being said to the board, that is the representations to the board, and also what the findings of facts are, that they accurately represent the actual discussion. Because at the BOA meeting, 80% of the time was spent talking about how this sign was less non-conforming than the existing sign and whether the BOA liked it more than the existing sign. Those are not the standards. In terms of Ms. Lamboy, kind of the same thing. She also allowed, and you know, has lots of experiences, and in my opinion, should have told the applicant that their argument about it being a less non-conforming sign did not meet the standard that they needed. And we wasted a lot of time. There were two H board meetings on this, one in August of 22, one in March of 23. There was the BOA meeting in January of 23, all with this improper standard being used over and over and over again. In addition, for Ms. Lamboy, I've seen her say things like, oh, don't worry, we're taking away all this material from this significant structure, but we could put it back sometime. That's not the standard. And in fact, she testified for St. John's College during that hearing, which I believe the minutes, there was an adoption of those findings in January of this past year. Additionally, I tried to appeal the BOA decision based on a point of order that I put in. And I saw Miss Lamboy just recently make sure the board, that is the H board, knew about a point of order that was being proposed and made sure the board actually discussed that. But when I put in the point of order for the BOA, there was Miss Lamboy never brought it up. Miss Fergelli never brought it up. The chairs did know about it and it was addressed eventually, but I was treated differently than other applicants who have put in, or other parties who have put in a point of order. When I did file this appeal on the BOA, which is now in court, Miss Lamboy misstated my application, which I can show because I have emails up the wazoo about this is the date I have to file. I'm coming down at this time on this date. You know, you're not giving me the application I need, etc. So the date was misstated, but again, I have the documents to show when I actually filed it. And at that time, she told me that that Jason Kluk here wanted to review it, not to pay. Normally, I would have paid, I would have gotten the receipt, I would have shown it to Miss Lamboy. She would have dated it and stamped it and given it to me so that I could serve the Lucchese agents and Lucchese itself. And it was never stated by Miss Lamboy that I had been told not to pay it. And that was one of the reasons the council did not take this as a reason to dismiss the appeal, but they were trying to bring up that it was late. It wasn't late. The evidence, the proof shows that the land use department itself didn't even issue a bill for 4 or 5 days after I filed. So again, I feel like there's a lot going on in this Lucchese case, that it's been handled improperly from the day one. There's been changes now. So after they decided that, you know, they were going to allow, first the board, H board, allowed the design 2-to-1 and only 4 people present, supposed to have a majority of voters, that would be 3. And that's what I in part was appealing. Then I'm told, oh no, now they can't actually make final decisions, they're just recommendations. It went to the BOA, and it went back to H board for a recommendation, and it never has gone to city council for a vote on the recommendation. And I've brought it up and I've been told that somehow doesn't matter, it's not going anywhere. So I feel like, again, that this case is a very odd case. It has a lot of procedure that is questionable. There were definitely, the standard wasn't the standards that needed to be used. And these 2 professional employees here should have known that the applicant didn't have a chance in terms of the grounds, but just kept on doing this. And so again, I don't feel that I'm trying to harass anybody. I feel that I am very interested in having city employees act with honesty and integrity. And that's where I'm coming from. Integrity is what is required of city employees under this code. And again, if you are allowing people to misrepresent standards, or you yourself are drawing findings of facts and conclusions of law that don't even come close to what the discussion was, to me, this is not honest. This is not having integrity, and it does not promote confidence by the public in what is going on at City Hall. I also believe that at least some of this, the March statements from last year, and this ongoing thing in May of last year, that I am within the time frame of 1 year. And I would have been earlier with Pat Fergelli's complaint, but the city clerk, that is Christine Melnick, decided that it was an HR matter, and I was never even informed that my complaint was not going forward. This was going to happen again. This time, I was told by Ms. Cardenas here that the city attorney and she were reviewing it the Friday before their Easter break. And I look at the ordinance and I don't see the city attorney or the city clerk being involved in it at all. It is a matter of the board, as far as I'm concerned, for you to decide whether this has enough, if I have standing, and if the complaint has been filed with enough time and with enough specificity to go forward. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Beninato, thank you for that summary. Ms. Lamboy, would you like to respond as far as the allegations regarding you are concerned? And I understand the attorney in this matter, Ms. Fergley, is not present. She told us she could not be, but I'll let you respond.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board. First of all, I would like to say that I am a certified planner, American Institute of Certified Planners, and there is a code of ethics that is associated with that. So I not only take very seriously my ethics as it relates to the city, but also as it relates to my professional affiliation. So I will point you to the packet. I did provide all of the cases, their staff reports, as well as minutes and findings of fact and conclusions of law. And in those cases, and I did review the record for myself because it has been quite a while, the discussion, correct. I'm trying to go sequentially according to Ms. Benenato's comments. The discussion was about a sign that was being proposed. The request was for a variance for 15 feet. I'm sorry, the code requires 15 feet, and this was higher than 15 feet. And the applicant stated that because it's on the plaza and the portals are located on the plaza, that the visibility of the sign would not be that great. In the presentation, I noted that the proposed sign was smaller than the existing sign that you see out there today for Lucchese Boots. I think that was a misinterpretation by Ms. Bedonato, but as you see in the record, in the minutes, there were questions from Chair Friedman as well as other members of the board about exactly what that meant. Certainly in response to Ms. Benenato's comments, but also giving staff the opportunity to further explain it. And so Ms. Fagali and I did both respond to that. And the board chose to act on the case to grant the exception. The variance to the height standard. This is a unique case in that the Historic Districts Review Board also has jurisdiction. Ms. Benenato indicated that an exception was requested for the letter height as well as the overall square footage. And once again, this is something that was an exception to the code and completely understood as something that is outside of the code, but both the Board of Adjustment as well as the Historic Districts Review Board do have the authority to grant those. The Board of Adjustment minutes, I'm sorry, let me go back. For the Historic Districts Review Board, the results of that was that the board voted to not grant an exception for letter height and overall square footage. The comment being that the sign should comply in those respects to code, but it was understood and supported that the sign height be greater than that permitted by code. The reason it went to the Board of Adjustment is that is a zoning standard, and the Board of Adjustment has the authority to vary zoning standards, and the Historic Districts Review Board does not. The Board of Adjustment minutes and findings of fact and conclusions of law were not adopted until May, but the reason is that First of all, we had some quorum issues, and also, I'm not certain if this board is aware, but findings of fact and conclusions of law, which were completed by staff prior to 35 days, are considered in effect adopted at that 35th day. So there, although the board did not adopt them until May, they were in effect at that point, at the 35th day. The expectation is that those findings are approved at the next board meeting. And so that was the first available opportunity to the board. With reference to the concern of Ms. Beninato regarding the inability to have a reconsideration of the decision, I was not copied on those emails to Chair Friedman. Chair Friedman is an attorney just like you all are. And I think the importance of the issue is to realize that could be considered an ex parte communication. The other case that is being referenced by Ms. Beninato, the applicant contacted me and requested that I bring this to the Historic Districts Review Board, which I did based on that request. That's my role as staff. It would have been helpful for me to know that so I could exercise that type of action with the Board of Adjustment at the May meeting. I really am concerned that for a garden variety land use case in which I'm representing the code, that Ms. Beninato, who is referencing a policy, and as I outlined in my memo, it is a policy, but it is not one of the criteria that illustrates whether an ethics violation has been made. And I did address all of those issues in my memorandum to you, my response. For instance, if I were to draft a staff report that just references to a general purpose clause of any portion of the code, that would not be sufficient and would not have any true standing as a reason for a report or for standards, for responding to those standards and affirming or not affirming whether those standards have been met. For case reports, for Planning Commission, for the Board of Adjustment, and for the Historic Districts Review Board. I have worked in all aspects of planning in my career. I've worked in long-range planning, a lot of development review, as well as historic preservation. And based on this experience, I really find it important to lay out a case clearly and in an understandable manner to the board. So it may be that stating something is less conforming, or I'm sorry, non-conforming, as a potential benefit to the sign being, higher letter height and overall square footage was not the best use of my words, but Ms. Fagali agreed. And the criteria for approval were outlined in the staff memo, which did not say less, not. I was curious when the complaint was filed on January 31st, and then Ms. Beninato was able to reference or to do an addendum February 22nd. It did not seem appropriate in that case. I think the case should have been laid out clearly on January 31st in order for it to be considered as a whole packet. That did not seem appropriate. With reference to St. John's College, the Historic Districts Review Board does review for historic preservation as well as for design standards. In this case, the now Pritzker Student Center, which was the Patterson Student Center, I believe before, the proposal was to expand the bookstore as well as to provide additional lounge space and additional space and comply with ADA standards, exiting standards for the rest of the center. The concern was that the ADA standards weren't being met, and they have a large ballroom where there's several large events throughout the year, and the fire exiting was important to address. And also there are Mr. Gerard, and I can't remember his first name right now, has murals and designs inside the student center that typically the Historic Districts Review Board does not have jurisdiction over the interior of the center or any building. But in this case, it was felt by the Historic Districts Review Board that that was appropriate to preserve those spaces. Furthermore, as part of my staff report, there is a code criterion that if something is removed in the future, in addition to a significant building, and the historic facade is reestablished, then that can be done, and it is exercised regularly by the Historic Districts Review Board. There needs to be a balance to allow for residents, as well as in this case, the college, to have some adaptability of their buildings to reflect changing needs. And once again, that was a standard in which I was responding. There is a city council with reference to the appeal filing dates. The item that I misstated was a mistake, and but it did not impact her ability to file an appeal. It was early when she filed it, and it was still within the allotted time frame per code. So there was no impact to her appeal. There is a city council resolution that outlines the appeal process, and Director Klug has found that the appeal needs to be considered as sufficient and addressing all the criteria. So Mr. Klug first reviews it as the land use director, and then the city attorney's office reviews it for sufficiency and making sure that it has standing as is appropriate. Then it goes to the governing body for that resolution. The most recent appeal that Ms. Benenato filed, I went again against Mr. Klug's wishes, and I allowed Ms. Benenato to pay for the appeal because of her expressed concern and my interpretation of the code, and that may have not been right, considering that my boss had requested that not be done, but I did allow Ms. Benenato to pay for the appeal. With reference to Lucchese, I'm sorry, circling back to that, my notes are everywhere. The city attorney's office determined that in November of 2022, that the code had been falsely interpreted and that all exceptions needed to be considered by the governing body, and it was just a recommendation from the Historic Districts Review Board. We've now corrected that. There were many cases that I took the governing body that involved in exceptions that were a recommendation. In the case of Lucchese, the applicant chose not to go further. So that is the reason that it did not go to the governing. And
Ms. Lambo, let me interrupt for a moment. This board is not going to review the wisdom or the legal interpretations that were made. We're only here to evaluate whether there was a claim that's sufficient for us to consider investigating further as to the ethics of what the staff did. So you can limit yourself and to the ethical issues, and you can skip the technicalities, which we're not going to review. Okay.
And I was just about done. Thank you, Chair. So first of all, the complaint, I believe, was untimely and did not meet the criteria. Second, the complaint, as I stated previously, does not state a violation to the ethics code, just to the purpose and statement of policy. And finally, this is a garden variety case that was taken both to the Board of Adjustment and the H Board. The staff reports are a team effort. It's not just my recommendation. We do that. So we are consistent in our recommendations and consistent with our interpretations of the code. And so in this particular case, the recommendations that were made were consistent with code, and that'll conclude my statement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a moment. Yes, you will. I'll give you that. Mr. Martinez, I think one thing we should probably clear up is the representation that Ms. Lamboy received from the city attorney's office and how we've dealt with that to avoid a conflict, if that in fact was done. You and I discussed that. Just don't know if it actually followed through.
I have not been coordinating with the representation that Ms. Lamboy may or may not have received because I am representing the board and I'm trying to not have a conflict of interest or not a representation among clients. So it's a little bit delicate for the city attorney's office. So I have not been communicating with Ms. Lamboy about the substance of this complaint.
Or with the attorney, if there is any representative. You don't.
I'm not aware of.
Okay. I just wanted that to be clear that if you are being represented by counsel, they have not been discussing this with Mr. Martinez. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I retain my own counsel to assist.
Oh, personally? Okay.
Just because of the conflict of interest, and I read the waiver, and I felt it was most appropriate to.
Okay, so we don't have a city attorney involved at all
That
on
is
your part. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Benedetto wants to respond. I'll give you that opportunity. I'll give you the same statement that I just gave to Ms. Lamboy, that we're not going to review the legal interpretations that were made by her or by the city. We're not going to review the factual findings themselves, because those are not within the jurisdiction of this board to do. And if I'm not mistaken, you do have a district court case appeal pending on this, do you not?
I have an appeal pending on this, and it has a lot to do, it's actually based on the discussion by the city council that rejected the appeal without notice to me or an opportunity to be heard or present any kind of information in a reasonable time and manner. And also because of this so-called 35-day rule, which I don't think it's very clear. I think Ms. Lamboy, because of all the facts she presented, the fact is that the Board of Adjustment has no recording going on. It's somebody sitting there taking minutes, but it's not YouTube, it's not Zoom, it's none of those. And so the minutes and the findings of facts, they didn't make any findings of facts. So if you were to look at those minutes, you would see that the board made no findings of facts. They just decided that Lucchese should have the sign, which is very different than all the findings that Ms. Vergelli created, invented, because it is not reflected in the discussion. Ms. Lamboy actually did receive an email, as did Erin McSherry, this head city attorney, the day after this BOA meeting, in which I also sent it to the chair and the co-chair, not expecting any response, but putting them on notice that I had put in a point of order and that I was expecting that they would consider rehearing the case because they had not used the right standard, and that Vergelli had actually misrepresented the law to them about 1452A6. And I think that's important because, again, Ms. Lamboy did have that. She did nothing to help me get that actually in front of the board. It was there. Mr. Friedman did address that. It's in the minutes of May. So I just want to be clear about that. Again, I think if you don't have, every part of an ordinance has to be given effect. And there is this purpose section. And it's the only one where really the public can have some accountability here, because we're not talking about financial conflicts of interest, which is basically what you have in your ordinance. This says that both employees and officials must act with integrity. And so if you don't give that any kind of strength, any purpose, any interpretation, then you are just cutting out a whole part of the ordinance. And I don't think that's correct to do in terms of how statutory interpretation is done. And I also think it's an incredible disservice to the public when we have this misrepresentation. Just like with the St. John's case. It's not about here, take all the material out of the significant structure on these primary facades and sometime you could recreate it. No, you are supposed to maintain that facade and you could build onto it, but it should be there when the addition is taken away. It's a very different standard than just presented today by Ms. Lamboy. And she didn't, what I found really interesting is that she went into all the minutia of these cases rather than addressing her own actions. Thank you.
How would the board like to proceed at this point?
We asked, I have a question for Ms. Beninato, if you'd be okay with that.
You're asking Ms. Bednato
Yes.
questions? Okay. Ms. Bednato, if you come back. Sorry, recognize Mr. Miller.
Chair, and thank you, Ms. Beninato. I think I understand from your second explanation that you're still relying only on the section 1-7.2, the statement of policy as the specific provision of the ethics code that you alleged to have been violated. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to give you a chance to identify anything more specific if there was one.
I looked through that and I don't actually find any of the other specific actions that are forbidden to be applicable. Because again, as far as I can tell, it's mostly about financial conflicts of interest. However, I have to say that I do kind of wonder, being a little cynical myself, wonder how many pairs of Lucchese boots may be sitting in different people's closets at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for either party? Go ahead.
So for Ms. Beninato, you allege that Ms. Fratelli deliberately misrepresented the section. Why do you say deliberately?
Because Ms. Winston, who is the co-chair of the BOA, asked her to read 14.5.26 or A6. She read the first two sentences, it's a 5-sentence subpart. She read the first two sentences and then said, this has nothing to do with signs. The third sentence, and I'm quoting it, structures other than buildings, including signs that are non-conforming, may not be repaired or changed, only removed. She absolutely said that that subordinance, that subsection had nothing to do with it. And there's one sentence in the minutes that actually confirm that that is what she said. And again, if you look at the minutes, you will see that the BOA spent 80% of their time talking about the wrong standard, talking about whether the sign was less non-conforming. That is not what the character, the standard is. The standard is, can you make reasonable use of the building or of the property with the current zoning? And I had presented both writing and verbally why they didn't need to have a sign of variance for yet another logo, basically a corporate logo. Thank you. Did I answer your question?
Kind of, I mean, to what benefit would you deliberately do that?
I don't know. I don't know why somebody didn't correct the applicant from day one when they came in with this chart showing what the standard required, what the new proposed sign was going to be, and what the existing sign was. This was the presentation over and over and over again. It is the wrong standard, whether it's for the H board or whether it's for BOA, it is not the right standard. Both the lawyer and this planner who has all these degrees and, your professional certifications, nobody said anything. They were pushing through the sign. They were saying, "Oh, well, yeah, sure, go ahead." And again, when you come in and you say to the board, the H board, the sign meets the sign requirements, and then 2 months later, March 23, you come in and the same presentation is being done again, and they're still asking for exceptions because the area and the size of the letters are too big. That means it did not meet the sign requirements. Both Vergelli and Miss Lamboy have said that. Okay, that is a misrepresentation of law and fact. And I'm just really tired of listening to this kind of stuff. I listen to the boards and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the letter of the law, but who cares? Let's just do the spirit of the law." So I've been listening to this for 2 years. I've been seeing this kind of interplay going on at these boards. And this was, to me, a case that cried out for, it cried out for some kind of change. Something should be done here. We shouldn't be allowing boards to tell us they want to follow spirit of the law. We shouldn't allow boards to use standards that aren't actually the standards they're supposed to be using. And so that's why I came forward. I care about 14th Amendment. I care about due process. I care about the fact that the law is here, it's clear, and it needs to be applied clearly and not trying to, slide through something that shouldn't be. Because one of the agents, I must say, for Lucchese has worked for the city and should have known better, was more or less in Miss Lamboy's position. And so the use of this standard is really offensive. And again, if somebody reads 2 sentences of a 5-sentence subordinance and says it doesn't have anything to do with signs, and the 3rd sentence absolutely does, then I think that's a deliberate misrepresentation.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, let's discuss, if we can then remember that the issue before us is not to decide the merits of this matter as to either party. The other city, I'll remind you, the other person, the city attorney's staff who is not present today is also charged and has not been heard, complained against, I should say. So any discussion from the board regarding the presentations and how she would proceed today, just on the issue of whether or not to continue to research this and have moved to a full hearing?
Mr. Biederman, if I may, and of course we can discuss this, but I would actually make a motion to dismiss both complaints. I don't think that they meet our standard for determining legal sufficiency under 6-16.4. I'll start with the complaint against Ms. Lamboy and having Mr. Miller clarified that Ms. Benenato brings her complaint only under the Code of Ethics 1-7.2, the Statement of Policy. It expressly applies only to public officials and public employees. Ms. Lamboy is neither, and therefore I think the most simple way to dispose of the complaint against her is that she's not governed by that code, and therefore we don't have jurisdiction to adjudicate the complaint. Regarding the complaint against Ms. Vergelli, she is a public employee. She would fit under the Code of Ethics. However, for us to proceed with a complaint, it must set forth legally sufficient facts, which if true, show probable cause. We require that a complaint lists a specific violation. I don't believe the complaint by Ms. Benenato has done that. The phrase integrity of its government, I don't think that doesn't allege a violation. She has not alleged anything Ms. Vergelli has done that would violate that, except for misrepresenting. From what I've heard today and what's been presented in the materials, whether Ms. Vergelli misrepresented anything has been the subject of a lot of process in front of 2 boards and now a district court complaint. And I don't think that the complaint as stated gives us anything to rule on. And so I would move to dismiss both complaints.
Is there a second to this motion?
Can I ask a clarification on the motion?
Sure.
When you say Ms. Lamboy isn't subject to the ordinance, I guess I'm not sure I understand that. I thought Ms. Lamboy was not a city employee.
I don't believe she's a city employee. Oh, she is?
I believe she is. She's,
Oh.
as you stated, I believe you're in the planning, you're a deputy planning director, right?
So
Yeah.
but
I misunderstood. I thought she was a private planner. Yep.
what I do agree with and would be willing to second is the aspect of the motion that would dismiss these complaints based on failure to identify specific provisions of the code that have been violated. And I think to put my 2 cents on that point is that section 1-7.2 is a statement of policy. It's an aspirational statement about what city government should be. That's the only reference to integrity. And that's what Ms. Beninato has relied on, and that's why I asked for more specifics on that. And I think if you look at the rest of the ethics code, what we are charged with is examining potential ethical violations that do have to do with more specific areas such as financial conflicts of interest or failure to disclose and those kind of things, because that's what we can actually assess. Where in this case, we're asked to step outside of our purview and assess conduct by the Board of Adjustment and the other entity about a sign variance, and that in order to assess the substance or the merits of Ms. Beninato's complaint, we would have to do that, and I think that's outside of our purview. So I would second the motion to the extent that
amended.
it is to dismiss based on failure to identify a specific provision of the ethics.
Anybody else like to comment?
I have a comment, and maybe this is for discussion, but I'm also concerned about the jurisdiction of this board to discuss or to allow the Lamboy complaint to move forward with the district court case pending. And it appears that there is a great deal of overlap between the appellate process that Ms. Beninato is claiming here was an ethical violation and the appellate process that's currently pending. And I wouldn't want us to step on the toes of the court, particularly if we have an adverse outcome or an oppositional outcome. So I think if nothing else, the Lamboy complaint should be dismissed at this time for jurisdictional.
Okay, do you have an opinion on the other matter? Ms. Beck?
I don't, other than what's already been said. Based on my review of the complaint itself, I don't see that there is an ethical violation actually brought against the attorney for Gelly. So I second with respect to that.
Okay, any other comments from board members? Let me add something that I'm familiar with. The New Mexico Supreme Court has ruled in a case called State versus Gutierrez, or actually a cluster of cases, that was just the first name. In 2023, the Mexico Supreme Court 002, that similar legislation or a similar issue was raised as to the Governmental Conduct Act. And I just note the similarity of that. And I teach this stuff, so I'm familiar with this one. Some provisions of the Governmental Conduct Act were challenged when enforced against a number of public officials on similar issues involving a statement like that, like we see in our own ordinance about integrity. And what the Supreme Court said in that case was that there are no definitions to which the powers and resources of the public official would qualify as criminal conduct. In other words, nothing in those sections was specific enough to define conduct that would leave someone liable. Now, that was involving criminal prosecution, and we're not talking about that here. But I find that I feel that the same standard applies in that regardless of whether we're doing this criminally or civilly, the same standard applies in that there needs to be a clear enough definition to proceed against a person. And this gets to the question of specificity. And as we've all recognized, the city ethics code doesn't deal with issues of this nature. So we are, and that plus the fact that a district court case is pending that will address the Ms. Beninato, you've had your
I
chance.
just want to be clear, the court case does not have to do with this. The court case has to do with the discussion part of the city appeal ordinance and the 35-day rule. It doesn't have to do with unethical behavior. It doesn't allege unethical behavior. It simply is challenging those two provisions on a due process First Amendment. So it is not actually overlapping with this case at all. I just want to be clear about that.
Okay, what I was saying was that the due process arguments that you've raised are being dealt with there, not here. And you did raise the due process arguments to us. So those are being dealt with by the, by the district court case, and we're not going to look at those. So I agree, and if there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote.
Thank you, Chair. Judy Amer,
Aye.
And this is on the motion
The
to,
motion
as presented by Ms. Martinez.
as modified by Mr.
As
Miller.
modified, Mr. Miller.
Chair Biederman,
Yes.
Andrew Black,
Yes.
Christina Brennan, Christina Martinez, Justin Miller, Jose Puentes. Motion passed.
I want to thank everybody for their presentations. They were informative, and thank you. The next item on the agenda, we'll go back to the first one since Ms. Amer wasn't here and had told us she would be a little late. On that issue, I am going to have to step aside because that is an issue where I am recusing because one of the people who was being discussed in that matter and charged with unethical conduct is a very, very close family friend, and I couldn't possibly be objective. And I believe we have several others who are also. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think we don't have a quorum for dealing with this once, if the recusals on this issue are the same as they were before, which I think is Ms. Martinez, you, Mr. Puentes, and as I understand it, Mr. Black also. Are we without a quorum?
What I was going to ask our attorney to address is if a matter of this nature is brought up and we don't have any method for substituting people for our membership, as the Supreme Court does, they can have people sit by designation. We're not strong enough for that. If we have a quorum of members present and then these conflicted members leave the room, can the remaining members vote because the quorum was present to begin with when the meeting convened?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I don't believe so. I believe that you need to have a member, quorum of members present to vote on the specific issue. And so I think we're in the same quandary that we were before.
And we're in a permanent state of quandary because we have, until there's a replacement of the board with someone comes from Mars and doesn't know one of these two people, we're going to be stuck here. What about, what's interesting is that two other cases were dismissed on this matter with the quorum present on the very same issues, just different players involved, because the exact same disclosures that were claimed not to be present for the other two cases were now also claimed in this case, but which we don't have a sufficient number of people to vote on. But the board has expressed its concerns and disapproval of the attempts to penalize the other two. So is there a way to dismiss this matter that doesn't involve a violation of our quorum rules?
Mr. Martinez, can I ask, the rule says a quorum to conduct the board's business requires attendance by a majority of the board, i.e. 4 members. That can't be interpreted that we have a quorum now and then people who have to recuse simply step out. It doesn't say that you have to have 4 people to vote on an issue as I read it. But I don't know.
I happen to have a copy of Robert's rules here that somebody left on the podium. Let's see if we can find something.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to mention that, our 6-16 allows for advisory opinions. And I mean, no one has asked for one, but in theory, we would have jurisdiction to give an advisory opinion.
The same issues of recusal would apply, right?
Well, not on the specific facts, just on a theoretical set of facts. Like if someone filed a campaign statement that looked like, and then say what this looks like, then like our previous 2 decisions.
Well, you make a good, I mean, you raise that, it wouldn't even really need to be theoretical. I guess one option that may have come up last time was that I think it's possible that the complainant would withdraw his complaint, given that on the same facts, 2 other complaints have been dismissed. But that might require someone from the city to contact him and see if he would. Rather than leaving Mr. Zamora in limbo for forever, I think that would be better if he would just withdraw.
Mr. Chair, if I may, and board members, I reached out to Mr. Baca to inform him about this meeting. He did not seem interested in attending at all.
And I guess we can at least move the agenda. We don't have to deal with this anymore, do we? What do you see a reason to? If he's not interested in, this is actually the second time we've dealt with this and he hasn't showed up either time. So maybe we can dismiss it on that ground. If the vice chair has not conflicted, maybe.
I have no.
Could be creative. Okay. All right. I'd ask the city attorney to please look at what we can do to clear this off our agenda so it doesn't keep showing up in Mr. Baca's absence, and since we can't rule on it anyway. Okay.
Understood, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Zamora?
Members, maybe I missed something earlier, but if 3 members recuse themselves, 4 constitutes a majority of the quorum, and a 4-0 vote would be an effective vote.
We have 4 recusing. Yeah, 4 of us are recusing, either because of acquaintance with you or with Ms. Wexler. Let's raise our hands if we're recusing. That's why I'm chair, because I count.
There you go. I wasn't aware of the new members.
Okay. Now, we'd like to get this cleared up. Understand? Okay, we can move ahead then to report on Ms. Faulkner's complaint. And going back to case 2023-5, we had a complaint by Pilar Faulkner before she was elected to council. And that was a complaint involving allegations that, excuse me, complaint involving allegations that there were advertisements purchased in Facebook and in on the NBC, was it K? I'm blanking on the station, Channel 4. Thank you, KKOB website, which were very argumentative against her and another candidate, that they were unsigned primarily. I mean, it doesn't matter what they say because we don't regulate that, but that were stated in such a way that they needed to say they were very clearly advocacy against these candidates. And as a result, they needed to have disclosures as to who made them. But that only applies, we determined, in a situation where there's more than $500 worth of purchases. Since everything was anonymous, we did not know whether there were $500 worth of purchases or not. And this is to give you a status report on that issue. We were authorized, we left the meeting, we were authorized, and this was December, to consult with I was authorized to consult with an investigator and did so about whether or not there was some way to find out if the ads that were placed were in fact in excess of that amount. And let me say, it's not been an easy process. This is not something I've ever encountered in my over 10 years in this board, that we had to do this, and we were trying to blaze some new trails. So it has been difficult. We have been trying. I did talk to an investigator that the clerk directed me to, and his advice was issue subpoenas. You'll do better than I do. And so I approached Mr. Martinez about that to see if the city could prepare some subpoenas. And Mr. Martinez, I'll let you, we agreed that the KKOB subpoenas would work, but I think you had concerns about trying to go to Facebook. Do you mind reporting on what those problems were?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to pull up my notes on that matter.
Thank you.
And so I'll just summarize. Basically, Facebook relies on federal law to defend themselves against, well, when considering any type of subpoena. And this federal law appears to, it's called the Stored Communications Act, 18 U.S.C. 2701 through 2712. And Facebook has a policy that a valid subpoena issued in connection with a criminal investigation is required to compel the disclosure of basic subscriber records. And there's a list of what that entails, but it doesn't include particular information pertaining to the account, including the contents of communications. So a court order is required to, under different law, 18 U.S.C. 2703D. And for those, there's a series of criteria that must be satisfied before Facebook will respond to a subpoena. And it was our opinion that those criteria were not met. So basically, whether it would meet the requirement of an administrative subpoena, quote, authorized by a federal or state statute. It's not clear that the ordinance would satisfy the statutory requirement. The statute specifically requires the court a court order. The court order for disclosure may be issued by any court that is a court of competent jurisdiction, and only if the governmental entity offers specific and articulable facts showing there are reasonable grounds to believe that the contents of a wire or electronic communication or the records of other information sought are relevant and material to an ongoing criminal investigation. So in other words, it's extremely difficult to, in light of this federal law, to subpoena anything from Facebook. So I think I'll leave it there and stand for any questions that the board may have.
Is there any progress in terms of preparing a subpoena to go to KKOB, which didn't have these restrictions?
No, I think that that would be possible for us to do that, and I'm ready to prepare one for the board's consideration, for your consideration, if that's how the board wants to proceed.
Yeah, the board has given me that authority. As of now, I can, if the board continues that authority, I would want to sign that and find out. And ultimately see if we meet that $500 threshold to proceed under our rules, and then we can determine who it was who did it and see if that helps. But it's very frustrating that it's so difficult, but this person has done a good job of covering their tracks, and I have to own some responsibility here for not having moved quicker, but I thought things were going to move and they weren't. They were much harder than I thought. Go ahead, please.
I've been doing some informal research, and what we've discovered, and I'm just going to tell you what we discovered, and then it's up to you guys to decide what to do with it. It is not so much that they posted, the mechanism they're using to post these things is an IP address that's connected to an app through Google. So no matter where certain people went, like say if you went to KOB and you were part of this app, that story would show up on KOB. If you went to KOAT and you were part of this app, that story would show up on KOT. And no matter where you went, if you're linked to this app on Google, which this IP address that put this out there is using this app. So anyone else who's part of that app, anywhere they go, that story is going to show up. Because the app that Google's using will put that into the content that's showing up for this person. So like if say, I went to KOB and I was looking for something on Pilar Faulkner, they would show up. And then if I also went to Taos and typed in Pilar Faulkner, it would show up. If I went to Facebook and typed in Pilar Faulkner, it would show up. If I went to YouTube, it would show up. So whatever platforms that Google has kind of dominion over, this app that they have invented allows people to attach to that app, and then it doesn't matter. They're not actually posting it on these places. They kind of are through the app, but it's not a singular post. It's being done through an IP address that's then using this app to kind of flood social media platforms with this story. So then what that leads to is that what we have to do is we then have to find out what that IP address is, because that's the person or entity that did it, is whoever owns that IP address. And so that is a little trickier in that I'm not sure exactly how we do that given the difficulty to date. I maybe KOB TV, because that went into their platform, could somehow give us some information on it. It's been suggested by some attorneys who are, and again, this is informal conversations, that we have a list of people that the community is pretty certain have something to do with Jay Baker. And you could subpoena those people under oath and then question them about who Jay Baker may be. I've also heard it wasn't Jay Baker, it's this other entity that used Jay Baker, like it's all gossip. But one avenue that some people have suggested who are attorneys has been subpoena the most likely suspects and put them under oath. I don't know if we want to go that far into it. It's now we're discovering that it's not just a post, it's now a mechanism they're using that floods social media with these stories. And so there's really no recourse anyone has if they're under attack from this entity to protect themselves, because anybody who's using the Google app is going to find this story, anybody. So it's potentially going out to millions of, hundreds of millions. And so that's kind of that's the issue I take with it. I mean, again, I'll reiterate, the story that was told about me was absolutely false, and it endangered my living, like it endangered my ability to work. And so I'm thick-skinned, but I also see what they're doing to a litany of other people who may not be thick-skinned and may not have resources to stop the situation. I do know that it's pretty common knowledge that the Jay Baker contingent comes out of the wastewater plant. So that's pretty much everyone to a man believes that's where it started, is in that. But again, this is all gossip. So it's informal communication.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Do you think this means that we need to perhaps go to a computer expert, an IT expert, and use them as the source of information about the source for this, these payments?
Yeah, and I think you might find that if we can track down the IP address, that is going to tell you exactly where it came from.
If there were more than one computer used, would that, we'd have to find them all, wouldn't we?
Well, I mean, there's going to be an administrative login, and that can be given to multiple IP addresses, from what I understand. But whoever did these ads, that's a singular entity that has a singular IP address. So once you got to that entity, there's a chance you could get to the rest.
Okay. Can I ask the city staff to give us a hand in finding this out? Because we don't have the independent resources. We depend on you. Okay, that's helpful. The other thing I need to disclose is that we did get an email, an anonymous email, of course, where somebody claimed to be the person who purchased the ads for Facebook and said that it was, here's the receipt, it was $450. And so we're under the $500 limit. So why don't you just dismiss the case? I've just told you everything. Well, they didn't tell us their name. They didn't tell us, we didn't even see an invoice that said where the money was, what it was being used for, let alone, who was the source. So that was not sufficient evidence. And of course, there was nothing to indicate that that was the only expenditure made, and it doesn't have to all be made to the same source. So that wasn't adequate. And, obviously it wasn't a sworn testimony since it was anonymous.
I'll just to explain why I'm I would like to continue with this effort. I personally have, through community members who are connected to Jay Baker somehow, I have been told that they know certain things about my personal life, like that I'm getting a divorce, and that they intended to use that against me if I didn't stop the complaint. I've had people approach me and ask me to please not do it because it isn't Jay Baker, it's somebody else. So it continues to be a form of harassment. And again, if it's happening to me, it's happening to other people. I don't like bullies. And so I don't back down from anything like this. And so it's just so you know, it just continues. Every so many weeks, I get someone calling me and saying, counselor, they found out about this and they're going to use this against you. And some of it is most of it isn't even true, but it just continues.
Okay. And we don't have a city campaign coming up until next year, but nonetheless, we should be moving on this well before that happens.
I do. The city police may have an IT guy who could at least, I don't know if the resources can be devoted to this. I was told by the administration that they want to support me on this initiative for a range of reasons. But if we have some IT people in the city, maybe resources can be devoted in kind or something to this initiative. I'm sure we could talk to state police possibly and see if they could help. I don't know that we necessarily have to hire. I mean, maybe we do. I don't know. I'm just throwing ideas out.
Okay, well, thank you, Counselor. That's very helpful. Anything from the board? Mr. Prentice? I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Chairman, actually, it's a situation that's somewhat related to this. It has to do with some things that were actually posted this morning on Facebook by, what I assume is the pseudonym Jay Baker. I just have to address this because I am a state employee. And just for the record, I did take annual leave to attend this meeting, and I do so consistently for any attendance of these meetings. Another board member was also mentioned in this post. I wouldn't even be mentioning this had this not been forwarded to my phone earlier today. And I don't appreciate the intimidation tactics. And, you know, at first when I joined this board, I was wondering if I was going to stay, but now I've decided I'm definitely going to stay. And try to, you know, help the city have a good ethical stance. Thanks.
What did the post say?
It was a very long rant. I'm not really on Facebook much. It was just sent to me. It addressed different members of this board, or spoke of different members of this board, but specifically what concerned me was that this Jay Baker was definitely beyond insinuating that I and another board member were committing time fraud to some extent. The way he worded it was, you know, we wonder if they are committing time fraud. So I think he gave himself an out there, but I find it offensive. I can only speak for myself, but I volunteer my time to do this, time that I could spend with my family or doing something else. But I see this as an important role for the city. As I've told other people, I think this kind of volunteer work is what's going to save our democracy ultimately. And so I take it pretty serious. And I wanted to go on the record to address that we are using our time properly and documenting that. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Bartos. Yes,
Mr. Chair, yes, I too am a state employee and I'm taking annual leave to attend all city ethics boards. I think it's important and it is so, but I think the city code is going to have to somehow address these anonymous sources. I'm not sure that the code currently does that. And in addition, the little bit I know about finding an IP address is that the person has to send an email to you in order to be able to find out the IP address. So I don't know who has received the IP address. Is it KOB? Is it Facebook? Is it both? But I don't think anyone else involved in this has actually received it.
please.
It's noted that received an email with a receipt, $450. That may be a good email to start with.
You received that or
No, didn't you just speak to that someone sent an email in saying,
to Facebook, I thought?
oh, to Facebook? Well, you can find IP addresses on Facebook. You can also find them. Email isn't the only way. I talked to some IT people, but you just need someone who knows how to do it.
Yes, sorry, Ms. Clerk. Ms. Cardenas.
And you and I received an email with a receipt from an anonymous person claiming to have paid for those ads. Didn't you and I receive that email?
You're talking about the one I addressed earlier?
Yes.
Yeah, the anonymous one.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we received the email from the person forwarding the ads, but the receipt.
I believe that's what Counselor Faulkner's
Okay,
referring to.
that person said, I am not the person who actually, I'm not Jay Baker is what he said. He said that, but if you believe what he's saying, I mean, because he's anonymous. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yes.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I guess this, the origin of this is a complaint, and the complaint only speaks to certain things. And so I'm concerned now that there's sort of an open-ended investigation that's really beyond the scope of anything that we've ever done before. And I don't know that we have the resources to do what's being discussed, but the complaint alleges a specific person committed a violation. They advertised on a specific website. And so I guess I'm just concerned about an investigation that is not grounded in this specific complaint. And I do want clarity from the board as to whether, and or you, as to whether we're still proceeding with attempting to subpoena KOB TV4's records. So kind of two parts to that. One is the scope of the complaint and the investigation that flows from it. And then this extra complaint information that has been received. I feel that I myself don't have clear direction on what the board.
Yeah, well, we hadn't gotten to that point yet. I think the subpoena is a carryover from the last meeting. And as far as I'm concerned, that continues, and that this is just a way to subpoena information from KOB, irrespective of what we just heard. But I think the question would be, are there potential additional violations as a result of what two of our members apparently are experiencing as criticisms of them, as false criticism of them? And I have to say that if lying in politics were an offense worthy of creating a subpoena, there wouldn't be too many of a certain party, at least, in Congress or in the White House. So I'm not so sure if we have authority as an ethics and campaign review board to undertake an investigation that involves simply lying. The way that, because what Ms. Faulkner's complaint has been that there was the failure to disclose, as required by the rules, failure to disclose if there's $500 involved, who the source was. And I'm not sure if we can help the others or not. I'll listen to you once, Ms. Beninato. Go ahead.
First of all, I want to say that IP addresses are helpful, but I think you can hide behind several IP addresses, just like emails. You can ping them around and you don't actually know who sent it. But I think your subpoena to KOB is really a good start, and ask for the IP there. However, I do think that given your really narrow looking at what integrity means and how you didn't want to enforce policy, that to go beyond the actual violation of did they have expenses more than $500 is taking you out of your actual designated authority. And I'm just pointing that out to you that, if you're going to be strict with what authority you have in one case, then I think you should, because this could be so far reaching that it could go on for years and spend a lot of city money. And some of it is, yes, people are going to feel intimidated and threatened. And in some cases, if it's untrue and they can find who said it, they could sue them for libel if they want. But I think that's really outside the board's purview of, whether somebody's being libeled or not. I think your purview is, whoever this is, did they spend more than $500 putting out these ads? Thank you.
Thank you for that opportunity. And let me just say, what I was saying before is not that we necessarily are going to do anything about investigating your specific concerns in the Facebook posting that you just talked about. Rather, that adds a sense of urgency to dealing with somebody who is acting in this way behind a veil of secrecy. That was my concern. So, yeah, okay. So I think we should go ahead with the subpoenas, and I would like to talk with staff, if the board has no objection, talk to the staff about following up on the IP as well, the IP addresses as well, to see if we can ascertain the source of the ads that were posted, including the receipt that we received. Anonymous.
Mr. Shea? Yeah, I do think we should ask KOB if, how much each one of those ads cost. I don't know if they're going to be able to answer it, but there's quite a few of them here, so they wouldn't even have to cost very much to add up to be 500.
That's what I was suggesting. with
Yeah.
Subpoena, yes. Okay. So I'll work with you on this.
Thank you. I must confess, I still don't have a perfect clarity on what the IP question is. And so, and I'm not sure how it relates to the complaint. So I just will, any future discussions, I'll be bringing it back to the complaint.
That's fair enough. And, I think the point where the IP issues come in clearly would be the point where we have reached the threshold issue that the $500 is there and has been spent. Then the next question is, who is it? And that's where the IP sources can help us. So it's a two-step process. Okay, any further discussion on this? And I do have one piece of action on this, and that is the rules say that we can hire an investigator, and we actually did work with an investigator. Maybe we'll want to call that investigator back in, I don't know. But we had 3 months to report on that, and we've crossed that deadline. I do want to continue on this, especially as we learn the bigger problem that arises. And I'd like a motion from the board, please, to extend it by 3 months, the deadline, which we've already missed. Is that possible?
I mean, for the investigation to continue? Well, I'll move to extend the investigation for 3 months.
A second? Second by Christine. All in favor, please say aye. Okay, any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the last substantive piece of business on our agenda today is the appointments to the Independent Salary Commission. The one relatively new aspect of our authority, not dealing with complaints, not dealing with rules, but simply being the impartial body to provide membership or appoint membership to, thank you, Counselor, appoint members to 7 members, to the 7 seats on the Salary Commission, the Independent Salary Commission. And I believe Ms. Beninato is the only member here, person in the audience who is on that list. Did you all receive the attachment to our mailing today, or it's in the handout as well, listing the people involved in their resumes? And we have applications from, I believe, 9 people for the 7 seats. And we have a bit of a constraint, which makes it a little challenging. There are 7 seats, of which 6 have relatively specific requirements. And I'll just read those into the record. According to Ordinance 6-19.3, or City Code 6-19.3A, the 6 categories that are fairly specific are that the member has to be at least one member of Santa Fe Chamber of Commerce, one representative of a neighborhood association, one representative of a community organization, a current or retired attorney or judge, a representative of the human resources industry or an employment consultant, that's one person, a current or retired chief executive officer, and only the 7th one is at large. So we have about 9 people volunteering, if I counted correctly, to fill those positions. And I believe there's a pretty short deadline. What is it that's due by April 30th exactly, Geraldine?
Yes, the Independent Salary Commission needs to complete their duties by April 30th.
Which is not very long. But is that because, when is the salary going to take effect, the salary change?
Let me look at that. Hold on one moment.
Because we're still going to have the same mayor in office until 2 years, well, a year and a half, November of 2025, right? Yes.
When I looked through the materials, I counted 8 candidates.
Chair, it's at the next mayoral election.
So that would be November 2025.
Sir.
Yes.
And I just wanted to make,
Did I miscount? I guess I don't count very well, Ethan.
well, unless I miscounted, I'm missing something.
No, I think you're right. Okay, so we do have one more application than we have applicants. I'm wondering if we don't have a bit of a challenge, though, filling those, if we can fill all 7 positions, even with 1 or 2 extra applicants. So we only got these yesterday, so it's a little hard to ask if everybody has read everybody's resume. I have. Let me just go over these briefly. There's a Burl Breckner. These are alphabetical order. Burl Breckner. Excuse me. In each of these provided a letter and a resume. Mr. Breckner seems to have background as a writer, editor, photographer, broadcast radio and ABC network affiliate stations. In fact, that was until 2014 in Topeka. Yeah, mostly editing, and claims to be, says he could fit in either of 2 specified commission positions. He's a president and CEO and president and owner of several companies. So he's been CEO or for the at-large position. And he is a resident of Santa Fe apparently since about, I guess it was well, he's in New York and New Mexico since 2014. Okay, the next one, there's a lot more to say about all these. I'm not going to, don't want to overdo it here. Okay, then the next one is Cynthia Sandoval. Her principal areas of interest are human resources, children and youth. So human resources obviously relates to, and she says her experience includes human resources and salary and compensation. Her letter, she doesn't give us a letter, does she? But she gives us a resume and the application. And she has been here for, looks like her whole life. Her background includes Masters of Business Administration in Las Vegas, New Mexico. And she's a director. She's at the State Personnel Office, Director of Workforce Planning and Recruitment. Okay, again, going back, she's been in human resources going back for many years in New Mexico. Fabian Trujillo, Independent Salary Commission. Oh, that's his interest, right? So that's what he's applying for. He indicates that he is a representative of a neighborhood association. He's a lifelong resident of New Mexico in Santa Fe since '99 and president of the Las Acequias Neighborhood Association and been on their board since 2009, president since 2016. He has worked for the Economic Development Department and in public service there and in the city. Office of Business Growth Manager for the city of Santa Fe for 6 years. Okay. Once again, I'm skipping over a lot of stuff all these people have. Then James Sullivan is a graduate of UC Berkeley, worked at Legal Aid, the Felker Law Firm, and Brennan and Sullivan. So he's got a background in law in New Mexico, practicing law here. And he's, okay, he is a member of the Independent Salary Review Board at PNM. And he said he evaluates compensation packages for their executive officers to ensure they're competitive and aligned with the industry standards. And he also oversees the $1 million of sober budget.
Hold on, that's Raymond Sandoval. That's Raymond
Oh,
Sandoval.
you're right. I'm sorry. Thank you for the catch. Yeah. Okay, so Mr. Sullivan just sent us one page. That's why I read too much there. Okay, I turned the page and I shouldn't have. Okay, so thank you for that catch. So Mr. Sullivan's experience, he has worked with state risk management, defending state agencies and their employees, including the state police and UNM, and the Public Regulation Commission and others. Yeah, it's done legal defense for municipalities. Okay, thank you for that catch. So then Raymond,
Chair, can I-
yes.
What category does Mr. Sandoval?
Well,
to?
there is he didn't indicate, but there is the current or retired attorney or judge. Okay,
Is that, that's our determination, or is the city
I
sort of
think we-
qualified?
we make that determination. I think on that, there's one question in my mind, and that is the specific languages we want a representative of a community organization. He indicates that he's a member of these community organizations. I don't see anything that he's either an officer or has been asked to represent any of these organizations.
He's in charge of Zozober for the Kiwanis Club.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, maybe.
As I see it, for number one, we have Bridget Dixon. She's a member of the Santa Fe Chamber of Commerce, right?
Okay.
Fabian satisfies number two. He's a member of a neighborhood association.
He's president of it. Yeah.
I think Ray Sandoval, in my view, qualifies as a representative of the community organization. Jamie
Okay.
Sullivan is an attorney. Cynthia Sandoval has the human resources experience we need. Burl could be the executive officer. And then Ms. Benenato could be the member at large, also an attorney. I mean, I feel like we can meet these. Oh, but am I missing one of,
There's
We-
one
there was
more,
Tom Spray that was emailed, but I don't see him here.
right? Materials.
Yeah.
I had exactly what Ms. Martinez had.
You what?
I had exactly what Ms. Martinez had in terms of the breakdown.
The only thing is whether Tom Spray is still interested, because I didn't see him in these materials, but I think he had submitted an email application.
Right, agreed.
I'm straight,
Chair,
here he
members
is.
of the board, I do have something from Mr. Spray that I'll email you, or I can read it off to you. Tom Spray has been a resident of Santa Fe, New Mexico since January 1994.
Pardon me for interrupting. It's right here. We do have it.
Okay.
It was on the back of the page. That's why it's easy to miss. It's page 50.
50?
50. It just, it's
Oh,
just,
yes.
it's just
Yes.
there's no application. It's just the 4-paragraph letter. Yeah. Or resume, I guess.
Thank you. So he's been an executive director. He has the executive experience, it looks like.
Yeah, it wasn't, it's not here though. I mean, it's,
Is he a resident of Santa Fe? Yeah.
yes, it says that in the first line.
Oh, there it is. Okay, yes.
Since 1994, he's been here quite a while. So 30 years.
Mr. Chair, when do we need to make a final decision on this?
Uh,
Okay,
I've got plenty of time. They don't have to finish till April 30th.
okay. So maybe, well, this is just a suggestion, but maybe we could go category by category of the 1 through 7, right? And someone make a motion for one of these people and just whittle it off that way.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going. So, okay, so at this point, I'm showing Bridget Dixon as the CFC, since she's the chair of that. Fabian Trujillo is president of the Neighborhood Association. Ray Sandoval, we decided does represent a community organization. James Sullivan is a retired, or we don't know if he's retired or not, but he is an attorney and practiced here. Cynthia, with a relevant background. Cynthia Sandoval is a representative of HR or employment. Burl Brooker, I believe, is a current or chief a CEO. Okay, and that leaves the member at large. I guess our choices are Ms. Beninato or
In addition, Ms. Beninato is also an attorney.
This point of a clarification, are we saying, Ms. Martinez was referencing that executive officer versus executive director? Are we drawing any distinctions there? When I think of executive officer, I think of business CEO. I think of executive director as like a nonprofit. This says executive officer, so I don't know if the board's gonna be a stickler on something like that, but that is something that you notice in how it's defined.
You're correct, it does say executive officer.
If we're ready, I would like to move for at least one person, and that would be for James Sullivan for the attorney position. So that's my motion.
I second.
we read that off once again.
Motion is for Jamie Sullivan to be appointed as A for the attorney position.
As in number 4. So looking at Mr. Breckner's qualifications, do we put him in for CEO?
I would.
You would? Okay.
I would as well, because he was president. That's an executive office.
Yeah, that seems,
He states that he has served in the role of
Okay, I just,
Did your question relate to any particular person who's trying to meet a certain position?
I would feel probably most comfortable.
So questioning, accountant.
You were referring to Raymond Sandoval, correct? He was executive.
Tom Spray was an executive director as well.
Oh,
the at-large is Spray.
No, I don't think that that's been put forth.
I think the only motion so far is for Sullivan as attorney.
Should we
Oh, we do them all,
together?
do all seven, because,
Oh, okay.
because then one person can fill a spot and then you might want to fill later, so. I just think if we have all seven laid out, we could do it as a slate.
I would make a motion for Burl Breckner as the CEO, executive.
Okay. And we still don't have the at-large decided? Okay, how about if we do this? The CFC is, the directors is the one we've all talked about. And Fabian Trujillo for the Neighborhood Association, again, he's the president. Ray Sandoval for the community organization. Sullivan for the attorney. The human resources industry or employment consultant is Cynthia Sandoval. The current or retired CEO is Burl Breckner, correct?
Made a motion, yes.
That is your motion. Okay, I want to make sure. Okay. And that was seconded by you, right? Okay, all in favor of these 6 nominees for the 6 positions, say aye. Or do we
Point of just to clarify,
roll call?
I don't think that was Miss Amer's motion. He was just moving for,
I thought we were doing one at a time, but I'm fine doing them as a group.
I guess what it sounds like you're saying is that for every position other than the at-large, we just have one person identified, and if we want to do that.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what I thought that was consistent with what I was hearing, so, okay.
I just didn't hear a motion for. But,
6,
well, we already approved James Sullivan as.
okay, right, okay.
So I guess we're doing a.
I was making, okay, fine.
Okay,
Okay,
so-
so the 5 other ones, right.
Happy with the motion or?
No, are we clear? Everybody clear on the motion? Okay. Okay, so,
We never even voted. So let's do 1 through 6.
that's what I was thinking, yeah.
That is the I'll make the motion that we vote on 1 through 6 as a slate, based on the assigned names.
Okay, let's do a roll call on that, please, Geraldine.
I'll second that motion.
Certainly, Judy Amer,
Aye.
Chair Biederman,
Yes,
Andrew Black,
Yes.
Christina Brennan, Christina Martinez,
Yes.
Justin Miller,
Yes.
Jose Puentes,
Aye.
motion passed.
okay, so the motion passes. Now we have the at-large and we have 2 candidates left. What is the pleasure of the board?
Well, I'll move for Ms. Beninado because she's here and expresses an interest in the position, the at-large.
I'll second that motion. I just think she's a good bridge between lots of different entities on this, right? Raise back.
Any further discussion or nominations? Okay. All right, let's have a vote on that. Let's go ahead with the roll call.
Judy Amer,
Aye.
Chair Biederman,
Yes,
Andrew Black,
Yes.
Christina Brennan, Christina Martinez,
Yes.
Justin Miller, Jose Puentes. Motion pass.
Congratulations, Ms. Benonato. Thank you for being here. Where it is. Okay, well, good.
Congratulations.
And thank you for offering to serve.
And can we send a nice message to Mr. Spray, who's the only person who applied who didn't get on, just letting him know we appreciate the experience-filled sections in different ways, or, you know, something nice.
Absolutely.
Okay, any matters from the staff?
No, given the hour, I don't think so.
Okay. Not that late. It's only 5 o'clock. Okay.
I have no,
Seven.
no matters either.
Okay. Any matters from the committee, or you think it's too late too?
But I do have a question. There is this legal doctrine called the rule of necessity. And I was regarding the Zamora RC Baca complaint. I wonder if we could get an opinion from the city attorney as to whether or not that would apply in this situation.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
And you don't have to do it today.
Okay, I guess I wasn't gonna, it was late and I wasn't gonna mention it, but there is a provision in the rules for complaints subcommittees to consider the sufficiency of complaints. And so I thought that the chair might appoint a subcommittee of 3 to just consider the sufficiency of that complaint as one path forward. But maybe I can, you know, put that into writing, as well as this, also this question of the rule of necessity.
Yeah, I thought about the rule of necessity. I just, there's a specific rule to that effect for judges. I don't know that we have one for us, and we're an administrative body, but I'd like it to be true. Maybe my question would be, if we came up with a subcommittee recommendation, what then? We still couldn't vote on it.
Mr.
Go
Chair,
ahead, Ms. Miller.
I'd be happy to work on a subcommittee with the non-conflicted other members, and we can see if we can figure out a solution.
Okay. I'll appoint the 3 of you who are left.
Thank you.
Okay, that you're the ones that are unconflicted. Thank you. Any public comment? There's almost no public left. You've already spoken. Okay, you got it.
I want to thank you for putting me on this board, I think. And, but I also want to say that I think that the ethics ordinance needs to be revised so that there is something for integrity, honesty, because this is part of ethics. And to say that you don't know what integrity means sounds like sort of a deflection as opposed to actually taking the case. I understand that it was a new approach to a problem, and that, you know, I'm trying it out. I have other avenues, such as going to the disciplinary boards of these people who are licensed or certified. And I very well may do that because, again, I am so tired, particularly of city attorneys lying to the board, lying to the council, and lying to the public. And again, I do appreciate your time and your consideration. Thank you.
Okay, and the last thing is scheduling our next meeting. We don't actually have, well, I guess we'll need a report from the subcommittee as our next item, and then hopefully by that time we can have some action taken on in the investigation of Ms. Faulkner's complaint. And And I'm referring to Ms. Faulkner so that you're not misunderstood as being here in your counselor capacity. You filed a complaint in your personal capacity before you were a counselor. So, yeah. Oh, you found something else out? Okay, you can give us a comment. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
So one thing that I just thought of is Jay Baker is posting things from the county. That someone is going into the county clerk's office and requesting these documents. And so when they do that, they have to go in and they have to ask for an instrument from the county clerk's office. And then they have to sign their name and they have to put some information on to access that public document. And once they do, then the county clerk then has the information of who asked for that document. And we can IPRA the county clerk's office and they can give us that information. Because whoever's posting those things on Jay Baker that are county documents has to go through a process at the county to get access to those documents. And they have to do it through the county clerk's office. So it's being suggested that we can IPRA the county clerk's office and find out who requested those documents. Because the way they're being put on the Jay Baker site is not someone taking a picture of a document, but even if they had taken a picture of the PDF, they still would have had to they still would have had to request the instrument and they would have had to request that document. And that stuff is all attached to your personal information when you make the request. And from what I understand, that's not protected. That can be IPRA.
So that would be an IPRA request, right? And then would actually have the name of the person requesting.
So like if I went in and I wanted this PDF, I would have to go in and, fill out a form to get access to it. My name and probably address and some other information and what document it is I was looking for. And then the county clerk would have record of that.
Mr. Chair, though, that 100 people could have asked for a particular document.
Well, except for that that's true, but I mean, it wouldn't hurt to just, the way I look at it is there's very specific things being posted that are conflict driven or inflammatory in nature or meant to be. And there's a date that they show up on Facebook, which means that get to that document happened within a short period of time of when that was posted, conceivably. And that there's only like within a certain number of days, there can only be X amount of people. And we can start with a smaller IPRA. I mean, just ideas. There's probably like 1,000 ways to skin this cat. And as I'm learning more about the process that's involved in how Jay Baker is getting information, I'm just reaching out to all the resources that I have at my disposal to find ways to identify who this is. But this seems like a viable, I mean, some of these things are obscure documents that and I understand what you're saying, Ms. Amer, it could be extensive, but I'm not sure how, does that equate to cost? Is that the concern or just manpower and time? Because we could narrow it down to a search within the time frame that it was posted on Jay Baker.
Yeah, no, I think if it turns out that our rules are being violated or could have been violated, it's up to us to follow up. And I don't think the cost is going to be prohibitive for that. So.
Okay, so this is the last thought I had for today. Hopefully.
But we didn't set a date now.
Chair, 3 months from
3 months.
now, so
Okay, that gives us the time to finish the investigation and for the subcommittee to meet. Okay.
do we need to set a date certain?
I'd like to set a date. I'm sorry to hold you, but just because it's easier to schedule around it far in advance. We're all attorneys, even though I'm retired.
Chair, my recommendation then would be in July.
Mhm.
How about July 11th.
I'll be traveling. I'm going to be traveling for a fair amount of July, actually, come to think of it. Let me see. Yeah. Well, oh, the 11th is Thursday. I could do Wednesday, the 10th. I'm not gone then.
That's a governing body meeting.
Yeah, okay.
I have a trial scheduled.
Okay. What about the 11th? Is that still a trial? I think I might be able to make that.
I have a trial that entire week.
Okay. So that week's out. And I'm gone the next 2 weeks. Most of them. So
July 25th.
July 25th, Thursday. How's that work for everybody? Not seeing anybody resisting, and I'll be back. Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, that's always going to be that. That's usually the best for people.
Okay, July 25th is the next scheduled meeting.
Thanks. I just accidentally sent it out, so you're all going to get this notice along with everybody who ever served on this board, I think.
I just got it.
Yep, see,